thought he was just a gardener, a man with dirty hands, too many flowers, and no right to kneel at a soldier's grave. So she drove him out, in front of everyone. No one dared say a word. But when he came back, he wasn't alone. The National Guard was with him, and what they revealed that day, no one in town will ever forget. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. In a small town just outside Augusta, Georgia, Sheriff Diane Mercer ran things with a tight grip. Uniform pressed, badge gleaming, always on time and never off duty. She believed in order, protocol, respect. So when she started noticing an older man, quiet, black, always in work clothes, spending long minutes kneeling by a grave after hours, she didn't like it. The man, Eli Morris, didn't speak much, just laid fresh flowers, sat still for a while and left. Diane assumed he was crossing lines. Maybe he didn't belong there. Maybe he was just trying to draw attention. What she didn't know was that Eli had been tending that cemetery longer than she had worn the badge. Every blade of grass, every clean headstone, every flower that wasn't plastic, he had placed with care. But rules were rules. When she confronted him one afternoon, her voice echoed through the rows of white stones. "You're not supposed to be here after hours." He stood up slowly, never raising his voice, and simply said, "I'm visiting someone." She wasn't interested. She pointed to the gate. "This is a military site. Either follow the rules or leave." He nodded once, picked up his flower bucket, and walked away in silence. That was the last time she saw him, or so she thought. In the days that followed, the town buzzed in that quiet southern way. Whispers, long stares. Some folks asked questions. Why him? What harm was he doing? But no one confronted her. After all, she was the sheriff. 2 weeks later, just before Memorial Day, the silence broke. 3 military trucks rolled through town, the kind you only see in parades or documentaries. They didn't stop at the city hall. They drove straight to the cemetery. Sheriff Mercer got the call as she was sipping coffee. "You need to come, now." When she arrived, she found them already lined up at the cemetery entrance. A dozen uniformed soldiers standing in formation. At their center, Eli, but not in gardening clothes. He stood tall, wearing a pressed National Guard dress uniform, medals glinting on his chest, and behind him, a young woman holding a framed photo of a soldier, his son. The commanding officer stepped forward and addressed the sheriff in front of everyone. "Ma'am, Sergeant First Class Eli Morris is a decorated veteran of over 20 years. His son, Lieutenant James Morris, is buried here. The state of Georgia recognizes Eli's continued service through volunteer care of this sacred ground, and from today forward, he returns not as your employee, but as a guest of honor." You could hear a pin drop. Diane's mouth parted, but no words came. She hadn't just driven out a gardener. She had humiliated a father mourning his son, a man who had bled for the same flag she wore on her shoulder. The crowd stared. Some looked away, ashamed they hadn't spoken up earlier. And Eli, he stepped forward, extended his hand, and quietly said, "Grief doesn't always wear a badge." From that day on, he didn't need to kneel in silence. People greeted him, helped carry flowers. And Diane, she returned too, not as sheriff, but as someone who had learned that authority means nothing without humanity. If this story made you think, comment the word dignity, because that's what was at stake. Not just respect, but the quiet power of someone who doesn't need to prove their worth. There is a story here on the screen that will also move you. Press to watch. You won't regret it.